What do cheetahs, ladybugs, and a lake in Canada have in common? And no, this isn't the setup to a bad joke. The answer is that all three sport a striking pattern of spots. But while the animals wear their stylish spots year-round, Canada's spotted lake only pulls out its polka dots for the summer. And as some of these are many meters across and have a variety of colors, they make quite the fashion statement. But while spotted lake might look unique, it actually has some competition. There are several other lakes that share the necessary characteristics for these stunning spots, even some on other planets. This polka dot lake is in Canada, specifically in British Columbia, and for most of the year, Spotted Lake doesn't look spotted at all. The lake only gets its signature makeover in the summertime. It's isolated from other waterways, and it's also pretty shallow. So in the warmer months, in a place with a relatively dry climate, a lot of the water in the lake just evaporates. The lack of rain makes the water level drop low enough that patterns on the lake bed start to appear. These patterns are pools of mineral-dense brine, the source of the stunning spots visible in the photos of the lake. The brine pools are super salty, and when the water level falls, they get covered in a crust of salt that forms a shell over the whole lake bed. The salty crust solidifies over the mud in between the pools as well, making bridges through the polka-dotted landscape. But where do the spots underneath the lake come from in the first place, and how are they so colorful? Well, it turns out it's a delicate balance of geology and chemistry that makes this lake such a fashion icon. Spotted Lake is an alkaline saline lake, meaning it has a high concentration of salts that are very basic. And as the water evaporates in the summertime, the water becomes so salty that it's more like a brine. That brine is denser than water, causing it to settle on the bottom of the lake. And as more and more water evaporates, eventually each puddle of brine is surrounded by solid salt rings that form bridges between the pools. And to be clear, this isn't table salt we're talking about. The most common salts in Spotted Lake are magnesium sulfate, sodium sulfate, and sodium carbonate. These salts are a lot of what gives the spots their color, so each brine pool's unique composition plays a role in its appearance. Magnesium and sodium salts make up most of the white crusts on the pool's surface. Meanwhile, some of the other striking hues come from different concentrations of magnesium salts, silicates, and other minerals in each pool, many of which formed the aptly named greenstone that lies underneath the lake. On top of that, there's some microscopic life that can impact the color. Even though a briny lake sounds like a horrible place to live, there are algae and microbes that can contribute to the hues of some pools. Layers of bacterial biofilm known as microbial mats can form in the lake and give some of the brine pools a green, black, or purple sheen. And these brine pools aren't just pretty, they're also useful. The mineral-rich pools once made Spotted Lake a prime site for mining metals like magnesium and calcium. Early surveys of the area around Spotted Lake noted the potential for industrial use of its metals. Magnesium mined from the lake bed was even used to make ammunition during World War I. But since then, the lake has been protected from industrial use and public intervention, and it's now under the stewardship of the Syilx First Nations people. They've revered Spotted Lake as a sacred site for centuries and historically used it as a medicine lake with healing properties. In 2001, the Syilx reclaimed the land around Spotted Lake to preserve the cultural site. But it isn't the only lake on Earth with this mineral makeup. Similar saline lakes stretch across Canada and the Pacific Northwest. This region has a semi-arid climate, which produces just the right conditions to make all of the lakes tend to evaporate in the summer, leaving behind mineral deposits in pools and producing that otherworldly polka dot effect. And I don't just mean otherworldly as a figure of speech. The Spotted Lake might have a twin on Mars. Or at least it had a twin a few billion years ago, but don't worry, its mineral deposits don't look a day over 1 million. Martian samples found deposits of minerals very similar to those in Spotted Lake, including magnesium and sodium salts and silicates. An eagle-eyed undergraduate named Kevin Cannon made this connection as a geology student back in 2012, as one of many scientists who have noticed that the hydrogeology of Earth and Mars have a lot in common. So Earth lakes could be used to study ancient Mars lakes that have dried up based on the composition of their mineral deposits. Studying these lakes could give scientists a peek into the history of Mars using what's in our own backyard. So if you're ever up in British Columbia in the summer, see if you can spot the Spotted Lake at its most fashionable. But don't be too salty if it outdresses you.